Welcome to Lift Your Legacy. My name is Jacob Rupp, father, husband, and rabbi. And each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unlock your inner potential and create change that will impact the future. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it.
Boy, this is fun. You know, I have a thing where I say if you ever kind of want to move out of your comfort zone and get access to people and talk to people that you might not have the opportunity to in any other way, start a podcast or start writing. And one of the opportunities when I was writing my series for Authority Magazine and BuzzFeed and Thrive Global, which are all large, thank God, news sources with a lot of views, especially Authority Magazine, which I would love to turn everybody on to, which is put together by a dear friend and mentor of mine, Rabbi Yitzi Wiener, who gets over 100,000 unique views a month. Again, is it the BBC? No, but it's pretty good. I was able to interview quite a few high-profile people about work and life balance. And as I was going through the interviews, a couple people, I was like, wow, this is really great. I'd love to talk to them more. So as a result, I set up a couple of interviews with very select individuals from the over 80 people that I interviewed for this series, one of which was Don Scott. Now, Don Scott, in a world of, the 20-year-old life experts, that Don Scott's not there. He has over 35 years of experience working in coaching and helping high net worth individuals and CEOs and executives and their adult children. I thought when I was initially reading his bio that it said adult children. I'm like, I wonder if I'm an adult child. But he works with these types of people. He started off as a CPA at a very large accounting firm and built a very large practice, and then realized that he couldn't see, as he says, could not succeed his way out of his own problems. And despite having all of the, I don't want to call them trappings, all of the things in life that we assume that if we get them, we will cease to be who we are and just sort of transition into, quote, successful people, he realized, hey, it's not working for me. Chances are it's probably not working for other people. And in his experience working with CEOs and business people who had achieved the American dream, or the universal dream, I guess you can say, of financial prosperity, growing a company to the size that where they feel good, reaching this ever elusive but always desirous, prestigious job that it doesn't solve, surprise, surprise, all your problems. So then he started to figure out, well, if I'm dealing with these people and I'm managing their money, right, and I'm looking at all of their financials, but I'm recognizing that there's all these human problems that are going on, Don became a coach and became a consultant and works with these types of people. And what came out from the interview were quite a few things. First of all, that if you think you're going to get places without coaching help, not going to happen. And even if you are able to achieve success, if you define success, which I think a lot of us do, myself included, as being able to be financially stable, secure, abundant, whatever you want to call it, and doing a job with prestige where you enjoy what you're doing, life is long. So like, what's after that? And just because I get there, what am I supposed to do with it now that I have it? I think that's also a general rule with everything in life. Well, once I have kids of my own, I will do X, Y, and Z. Or once I get married, X, Y, and Z will happen. Once I get that job, once I get that money. And what you realize is once you get, you never change. Once you get, you never change. And now you're a person with influence. You're a person with a spouse or with people that look up to you. You have employees. You have a company. You have all these financial opportunities that you could put your money in. And you are the same version, the same unrealized person that you were beforehand. Because it's not just simple to put yourself in a different environment or give yourself different responsibilities and expect your inner world to change. So Don and I go in depth into what will get your inner world to change. How do you identify what needs help? How do you work towards that process? I am in a lot of times asking questions about myself, in addition to asking Don both about his career choice and his professional life and the clients that he advises. So please strap on your seatbelts. I think that it is a very humbling and very human conversation about our needs and our desires and what makes us unique as people and how do we actualize ourselves. So with no further ado, Don Scott. Don, thank you so much for joining us today. Please tell me a little bit about how you got started as a consultant and what the process was like for you.
Sure. Well, it depends on how far we want to go back. Grew up poor. I knew one thing for sure. I did not want to be poor.
Okay.
I wanted to find a way to make some money. Found my way into accounting. Got my eyes set on Arthur Andersen, which was one of the greatest firms of all time for a lot of years. And so I had an opportunity to spend 19 years with the firm and working with wealthy families. And I always say I never really fit in at Andersen. I only made it 19 years. But I learned about the soft side of the equation, very unaccountant-like. And so that's how I first began working with families.
What are some of the soft sides and the real parts of wealth and success that you became aware of in your 19 years of working there?
Well, the first thing I can tell you is that it's not about money. I mean, people are driven to make money, and money's great. I like to take trips to Europe and all those things, but people are driven by holes they have in their lives, holes they carry around inside of them, and it's almost like the bigger the balance sheet, probably the bigger the hole was that needed to be filled in the first place. That's not a fair statement. But what are the problems? Back in the early days, I can remember in my 20s, I'd sit down with what I called the World War II veterans, these 70-year-old business owners. They always had about 2 fingers missing from when they started out on the shop floor. And they got nobody to talk to. They can't talk to the wife, the accountant, the lawyer, the banker. I mean, this guy's had all this bottled up for forever. And I show up. I used to cold call like crazy. I was just rabid, marketer. And I sit down with these guys. And I'm 27 or 8. And he's 70. And I started asking a few questions. And he gets up and he goes and he closes the door and he says, "Now, this is very confidential. I've never spoken with anyone about this." And he tells me about how he's been carrying his brother's family for 30 years and they're all a bunch of bums. And I'm thinking, I'm glad this is so confidential since we've known each other for about 15 minutes. So there's so much bottled up in there because it's just been work, perform, build the company, climb the hill. You fast forward to 2019, little different version. People change, the world changes, but we still have a lot of folks out there that are trying to fill that hole on the outside, and they end up with this mixed bag of life that feels like success until you start really looking at it.
So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about how you help people uncover what their holes are, because I think like you mentioned, the solution to everyone is like money and power, but the reality is maybe there's all kinds of different holes. So how do you uncover what your root desire is, and then what's the most appropriate way going about fulfilling that?
Yeah. Well, the starting point is, where are they? I meet people where they are, and I love people who are in a lot of pain because they're ready for change. They know, my balance sheet's great, or maybe my balance sheet's not great, but I got things that aren't working in my life. My marriage is not good. I've got no peace. I don't sleep well, all those things. And so those are the easy ones.
Because you're saying it's not like some deep unresolved thing. It's not like, I always was like looking for certainty in my life because of my family of origin stuff. But you're saying like practically speaking, look at what's broken right now. That's the hole. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's it. It's kind of simple. What do you have? I love this analogy of I'm sitting with somebody. I do this all the time, and I say, okay, we're going to put a hula hoop out on the top of the table. And we're going to lay it flat out on the table. And we're going to fill it full of tennis balls, right? And then when I snap my fingers, all of those tennis balls that are good, they're positive, they serve you, they're the things that you want more of, the things that will carry you forward, all of those good balls, if we want to use that word to make it simple, they're going to turn green. And then all of the tennis balls that don't serve you, that aren't what you want, you make a lot of money, but you work too hard, all the stuff that's in the way are going to turn red. And so let's open our eyes and let's look at your hula hoop. And I would say that the majority of the folks that I sit with, when I go through that little exercise, I'll ask, well, how much is red and how much is green? And it'll be about 2/3 to 3/4 red most of the time, right? So think about that for a minute, and we'll just stay with the whole career and money and et cetera part of life. Look, if you can accomplish everything that you've accomplished, if you got this many green balls with all of these red balls, can you imagine if you didn't have the red balls? Can you imagine then what life would look like if success, true success, is peace, joy, fulfillment, having fun, being able to sit out by the pool and call some friends over, on a Sunday afternoon without planning ahead. I mean, if those simple things are what you want out of life, well, okay, let's get rid of the red balls.
So that's a fascinating approach. I think that one of the things that we are most common to do, at least I can talk to myself about this idea, is that we try, in one respect, we try not to look at the factors that are not going well because they limit us. They make us, frustrated and depressed, and you try to focus on the good things. But what I'm hearing is that by identifying some of the bad stuff, you can sort of be more proactive. Doesn't that take, just thinking, any one of these, call them red balls that we're talking about, they take time to fix. So how does a person, I guess, develop the courage to admit it's a problem? Yeah. Or you're saying maybe most of us admit a problem, and then admit that they might have the bandwidth to accomplish that while keeping everything else up in the air.
Yeah. So it's really fundamental. The first thing is to just sort of put it all out there and look at it, and don't think of it as a problem, right? Don't judge it as wrong. Stop beating yourself up for decisions that you made 10 years ago and all those things. All the time we have is right now. So we put it all out on the table, the things that work, the things that don't. We don't judge them as right or wrong. They are.
So even something like a bad marriage, or say, a bad investments, and now the guy's, whatever it is, 48 years old, and all of his money's gone. So you say, put it out there, identify it, but don't judge it.
Don't judge it.
You made the investment. You screwed up the marriage. You don't judge it.
No, not at all. It is what it is. Everything outside of me is outside of me. Well, that's God's territory, right? Okay. I could get lightning struck. My wife could decide she thinks I'm a bum. I don't have control over anything except how I feel about it, right? So fundamentally, you ask, well, how do you change this? Well, that's a part of it. I mean, it's the whole process. That's a part of it. And then to learn to change thoughts, to learn that if I change my thought, I will change the outcome. So one level is changing a thought. The next level is learning how to change thoughts so that you have that tool. It's like changing a thought is a golden egg, but I really want the goose that lays the golden egg. That's having the tools and the process and the awareness that you can change thoughts. And then what brings that all together is the realization and the experience of seeing the outside world morph to fit the inside world. I mean, if I meet somebody that's all cluttered on the outside, I guarantee you they're cluttered on the inside. So as we clear out that clutter, it's going to clear out here.
It's fascinating. I have a couple more now on a professional level. Question number one is, how do you see when you're speaking to someone, and we're going to leave out, very clear, psychological disorders and imbalances, but what do you see the role of like a consultant coach is versus the therapist versus the, any of the other kind of, what do you call them, mental health practitioners? Because what it sounds like you're saying is that when you get into changing thoughts and changing habits, we're in a, how does a person figure out what they want? Who should I speak to? And, you personally, why did you say this is where I want to be as opposed to anywhere else on the spectrum of call it mental health practitioners, even though that's not technically what coaches are?
Yeah. So I'm an accountant by background, financial guy forever, and have a master's degree in psychology. So as I say, I'm this weird accountant that I ask you questions like, how much do you love yourself, right? So here's the difference between a coach and a therapist. And I've been in therapy. I mean, therapists are great, but as a coach, I have to create movement. I have to create change. So we go back pretty fast and look at the past, get all those red tennis balls out. And then we're looking at, well, okay, what are we going to do? And we're working, I use this iceberg metaphor, right? So the iceberg, the water being the surface of life. So you got a little piece up here, and that's where everybody's chasing around, right? All the, that's accountants and lawyers and bankers and jobs. And the answers are all down here, right? And so when I meet somebody up here, and then all of a sudden we're starting to poke around down here, okay, so you mean if I start changing the way I think and this belief that I've carried that that I can't do this thing or whatever it is, then that's going to free me up to take some steps up here. And so that's what I do as a coach, right? Is I help people see, okay, well, what's in the way? Where do I want to go? Where am I now? And now what are the practical things that I can do? Young kid maybe needs to go back to college, whatever it is.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, you're good.
So by having sort of a clear understanding of the problems, and I'm not sure if this is how most people feel. And I think that this is sort of one of those, just the intellectual biases that we have, that our specific problem is, too hard for anyone to figure out. And, I can say, and I'm sure you could probably say the same thing, certainly in my life and career, I'll listen to someone talk and poke around and ask some questions. And I will, I can write a strategy right away that I'm saying, a guy comes in, he's like, I'm overweight and I'm out of breath coming up the stairs. Like, great. So let's talk about what you eat. The guy's like, I have Danishes and, and all kinds of stuff. And how much you exercise? I don't exercise ever. So, great. So, cut this out, do this, done. So, how often are you seeing when the clients are identifying problems that most of the problems that people have are extremely straightforward to solve? And then conversely, when you are looking at yourself, and that's something that for me, I struggle with a lot, is even though I'm able very quickly to diagnose other people's stuff in the way out, for me, it becomes very difficult because it's hard, I guess, to see on the inside.
Yeah. So I'm going to take the latter one first. I've been doing so much of this work. I had a real epiphany in about, 10 years ago. I'm standing in front of my desk, as I say, my very nice desk and my very nice study and my very nice home. And I just remember saying, you stupid SOB, you're going to run out of time. Always thought I would succeed my way out of my problems. And that was the beginning for me. It really was. And I've done so much work now. I just had a conversation with my wife this morning and driving to work. When I feel something that doesn't feel good to me, even if it's not like some big sharp pain or some big ugly thing, there's just a little, I call it the mist, a little bit of the cloud. It's like a little ankle mist floating around under there. Boy, I am aware of that, and I am on that. And I want to know, I got no space for that. And so, and that's the way I want to live my life. I got no space for things that don't feel good, that don't serve me. I want to live in joy and at least just feeling good every moment. I can't be bouncing off the ceiling every moment.
So what does that mean about succeeding your way out of your problems?
Well,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I was making money, was working hard in a professional career, and I had this notion, and it was based on all kinds of bad information and false premises, right? That I'll get enough money, enough stability, get my nice house, paid for, whatever it was, that I'll be at this place where I can contemplate the meaning of life. And I'm kind of poking at myself a little bit, but that was sort of it. I could say, this is no way to live your it's happiness, what I call event happiness. You know, something great happens with your clients or your business, or you take a vacation, and well, that felt good to me, except that I was working, 4 hours a day on vacation. But you know, you can't get there from here. You can't do enough on the outside world to fill those holes. You gotta figure out what those holes are.
And so how do you look at kind of being a whole person, and what do you start to identify to knock out the negativity?
Yeah, it's all those things. So one we've already said is, where are you now? I call it the brown box, right? So we're all in our brown box, and there's some good things in there and a lot of not good things in there. So we look at that, and then we create an ideal scene. What do I want my life to look like, right? How much money do I want to make? My kids, my marriage, all those things. That picture better be a really good picture that brings a big old smile to your face every time you look at it, because if it doesn't, you painted the wrong picture, right?
Wow, that's amazing, because a lot of people I find are sort of like living a life that they don't want to, in a lot of ways. And I saw there's a scriptural basis for this, but the idea that if I would actually put on paper my goals, the fear of not hitting those is tremendous. So then, we want to write down, if I really want to be making $100,000 a month, I write down I want to make $7,000 a month or $4,000. You know what I'm saying? So like, how do you advise clients in terms of building something that puts a big smile on your face, but at the same time, like, you're not going to want to just jump off whatever it is, a bridge or something like that, because you can't, it's too big. How do you feel?
Yep, 100%. I understand. And how you paint that picture might be less, I'm going to make 100,000 a month by 2021, or it might be more of I am living in such fantastic abundance that I have the flexibility to do everything I've dreamed to do, right? That's the way I want to paint that picture.
So what I just did exactly, I try to succeed my way out of a problem by setting this goal, whereas the real goal is how to set up, okay, so how do you set up your life so that you have enough money to do what you want, not worry about it?
That's right. How do I want to be in the world? How do I want this life of mine to feel and look, and how do I want to walk through life? So that picture, what's that supposed to look like? And then we got to figure out what's in the way. That's back to the tennis balls, right? We got to put them right out on the table. I mean, I'll give you an example. Let me give you a quick example. So a client who is a partner in one of the big firms, high up partner, very successful. And he loves the firm, proud of what he's done, doesn't want to leave, but also just can't see another 10 years of this. So we go back and we look at, well, where's all this come from? And this is somebody that grew up in the Midwest, never heard, I love you, you're good, any of those things, and figured out when he performed well around the house, helped out, on the farm, all those things, he got those love feelings, never expressed, but it was what he took as, boy, that's like a drug, right? Well, so you fast forward, and of course this person's like working himself to death and just accumulating more and more and more, right? It's that programming that's so powerful. But once we got that out on the table, it's not like we could just snap the fingers and change it, but being aware of it.
Because he was, his problem was that he kept working hard to get those feelings, but the work he was putting in was getting him money, but not the feelings that he was trying to get. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It was a substitute for the feelings, right? But the effort just had him so overwhelmed that, it's like exhausted by Friday, a little recovery on Saturday, and by Sunday thinking about Monday, and then Monday it starts all over.
Right.
Meanwhile, the kids are growing up and all those things. Right. So yeah, the programming, and we forget this as a consultant. I mean, we all know psychology comes into play. No, no, no. It doesn't come into play. It's running the show.
Right.
I'm not running the show. My programming is running the show. Believe me, my 5-year-old Don is totally in charge until I got to a place where I could heal and love.
At least you knew he was there, kind of a thing.
Yeah, yeah. So, but once we know those things, then we're free to begin changing behaviors, right? So, okay, well, how can I bring other leaders in my organization up to support me more effectively? How can I have a conversation with my big bosses up in HQ about, you know, where we want my career to go over the next 10 years? How can I just deal with people popping into my office differently? You know, all those things, they cannot change when the guy's still working from that same programming.
Right.
But once we get a flashlight on the programming, now we can have a real conversation. And so as we see this change, and then we see this out here above the surface change, we start to say, wow, imagine that. I feel a little less stressed than I did before. What a novel idea.
So one of the thoughts that becomes very abundant and has been a theme in what you've been speaking about is our necessity, is a person's necessity to become aware of themselves and what they're looking for and what's going on the inside. The natural, I guess you can call it homeostasis of an office, of a family, of a relationship with friends, coworkers, whatever you want, has been developed. You know, I think oftentimes we try to create what's comfortable for us. And, you know, and I think this works in any time, you know, if you are seen as the guy that does this in your company, or you have a certain family dynamic with you and your spouse, then you go through this personal change. How does a person navigate changing themselves when the reality is that we live in a very social world?
Yeah. So let me try and understand your question. Is it, how do we change ourselves when everything around us, everyone around us has a certain expectation for us? You know, is they haven't changed, but I've changed.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of the idea. And also that, you know, one of the, how does a person deal with the fact that I'm sure you see this very often. How does a person deal with the fact that whatever genuine stuff comes out of them is going to radically change the important environments in their life? So what are they supposed to do with that? If the guy,
you know what, I mean, you know, what a beautiful problem. What a beautiful problem is that I took the time. I was able to get comfortable being uncomfortable and look into a place that I haven't looked in a long, long time and have never looked at very well. And I was able to get it all out on the table and find some clarity. And lo and behold,
I don't want to be a CPA.
I found out that what I want is different from what I have in many ways. And now I have a chance to create what I truly want and get rid of a lot of those things that I thought I needed, thought I was supposed to do. I've got clarity in the ability to commit to a plan and to shift and morph and what could be better than that?
Interesting thing is that specifically from your background, that you come from the world of accounting, you're working in the world of business, and all of the things that you're talking about that you're gravitated towards are very life and health and, so to speak, you know, stuff that it's very hard to put down on a balance sheet. You know, how happy are you, you know? So are you seeing that, I guess you can say, trends in your own professional career or where the world is going today? Are you seeing that these kinds of topics are becoming more discussed? Is there a greater need, or is it kind of the way it's always been?
No. It's so much more open now, and it depends on who we want to talk about. So let's talk about the sort of 50-year-old executive type, right? Yeah. Most of the time, they're not coming knocking on my door saying, you know, I want to find more peace and joy in my life. But it's you know, something's not working, and oftentimes it starts with finance, career, business. right? I got my business is stuck, got to transition to the next generation, those things, right? So, okay, but that's kind of why my model works. I can go in with my accountant, kind of thing, and let's talk about it, right? And then all of a sudden, I find out that, well, the guy can't turn loose of the control of his business and let it go to the next generation because he's seen himself in this particular role for 40 years, right? So he's running on literally 40-year-old programming, and somebody has told him he needs to make a change, and intellectually he gets that, but he can't, right? And so, once you begin to open that box, then, I get to see, grown-up guys light up like little kids because, all these things are in there. And it's like, you could create a $10 million balance sheet, but you can't figure out how to, live where palm trees grow. Give me a break, dude.
Right.
So this is a chance for everybody to see what's in there. And I am seeing more and more appetite for it. It's just kind of how do you get there? How do you get started? Once you get started, it opens up big time.
Amazing. Don, thank you so much for the time. How can people find out more about you and be in touch with you?
DonScottCoach.com is my website. That's the best place to find me.
There you have it, folks, another inspiring episode. If you enjoyed this, I ask you to please share this with your friends and to like us over on Rabbi Rupp through Facebook or on YouTube. And the more that we're able to get these important messages out, the more that we can really make an impact in the world. So I encourage you, please, to stay tuned. We have a ton of amazing speakers coming up, and also to tell your friends about it. Thank you very much.